Hi, JP.
Hey Josh, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I think I'm pretty good for a redhead.
Great. Well, let me introduce us. I'm Josh Summers, a Boston-based yoga and meditation instructor. You are JP Sears, arguably the most famous spiritual satirist alive right now. Your YouTube channel, Awaken with JP, has attracted millions and millions of viewers. That is not Trumpian hyperbole, by the way. Some have described you as the Stephen Colbert of the New Age, where you're poking fun of and exposing kind of the annoying spiritual behaviors that people do when they get into spiritual practice. But also on a serious side, you're also a life coach and seem to specialize in emotional healing. So there seems to be a serious yin to your yang within the middle of
Yeah.
that. For the few people in the audience that are listening or watching who have not found your stuff yet, where they haven't learned from you how to become more gluten intolerant, they haven't learned how to get ripped in 15 minutes or less, or they haven't learned how to take better yoga selfies to promote themselves on Instagram,
Mm.
how would you describe what ultra spirituality is? What's the essence of ultra spirituality? How does that compare to, say, garden variety normal spirituality?
Yeah. At its core, it acknowledges the fact that the only thing worse than not being spiritual is only being spiritual. That's why ultra spirituality is the trump card in the New Age realm. So ultra spirituality is much more progressive than regular spirituality because regular spirituality is all about your inner practice. Ultra spirituality is all about looking spiritual, which gives you significantly far better results than an inner practice of regular spirituality.
What are those results that you get from ultra spirituality?
Yeah, more significance, much better social status, very importantly, being better than other people. Being ultra spiritual, it's not about being better than other people, but it makes you more spiritual than other people, which is exactly what makes you better than other people. It's not the point, it just happens.
Sort of a byproduct?
Yeah, it's a byproduct. It's not, I don't package it and sell it, so it's not so
Okay.
much a product. It's more of a result. Result spelled with a capital I for intensity.
Okay. Do you see ultra spirituality taking root in the modern culture, or is it still
It,
sort of a fringe edge thing that's going
it's
on?
more like I don't like to root anything. In fact, like the root chakra is, I think, the least spiritual of all chakras. And,
Definitely.
when you root into the earth, you're getting so human. So I think it's like the most unrooted thing in our culture. It reaches higher into the sky. It's more ungrounded than anything else, and I think in the most compassionate way possible, it's taking over and conquering and destroying our culture.
Wow.
And wow is mom spelled upside down, so there's that full circle.
Double wow. Like that. Yeah. I may go silent a few times just because I'm trying to metabolize or digest what you're
Mm.
saying. Ultra spirituality sounds like to look more spiritual, sounds like it might take a lot of work.
It's, life is too short not to put in the work it takes to look spiritual. I mean, if you want to have a good life, then you got to do the work. And the more effortless you make the work, the effort, and anyway, the more effortless you make the effort appear to be, the better your results are going to be. And that's a paradox,
It is
according to
yeah,
Confucius.
yeah, the effortless effort of effortlessness or something like that. Um,
Ness, effortlessness, ness, ness.
do you see financial investment being a big part of ultra spirituality in terms of investing in a team to help the image get crafted adequately?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, $200 yoga pants don't just grow on trees. A high-powered camera to make your Instagram yoga photos look better than you actually look. those aren't free. So a team of mostly material possessions to make you as a person look better than the person you are, it's absolutely essential. There's no I in team, but there is an am in team. And I am is an interesting thing to connect with.
Yeah, it's a deep spiritual practice, I think, to meditate on that, isn't it? Or in the conventional sense, I am.
You are what?
Just I am. To rest into that. I mean, I'm not trying to flip it here, but that's, that.
So I was saying I am, and now you're saying you am. So I think this is a little bit of a conflict, Josh.
I apologize. I'll step back, okay? I think for us, or at least for me, the difference between ultra-spirituality and conventional spirituality is clear. But I think I'm worried about our audience. I think the subtlety might just go right over their head.
Yeah.
Because it is a subtle thing. So as a way of maybe drawing the distinction, making it clear, I was wondering if you'd be willing, if you're okay with this, I'm going to check in with you on this right now, but would you be okay if we use my own spiritual path as a kind of case study?
Mm-hmm.
And then you consulted with me and weighed in on ways that I could upgrade, improve, bring it to the next level. Would you be okay with that?
Not only would I be okay on it, I insist on it.
Okay, that's awesome, because I was afraid that you might think I was trying to force an agenda.
Your fear is automatically something we got to upgrade. Why be afraid when you can just be filled with love and light?
I was about to write that down, but I remembered that this is getting recorded, so I'll be able to go back.
By the way, the fact that you believe in a recording means you believe in the past, because when you listen to the recording will have been recorded in the past. And I think that's really hurting your presence. So if I were you, and I'm not, but I don't want to be, but I would stop believing in recordings.
Okay, I'll drop that then. I guess it's important that I really appreciate you allowing me to have this space, because I feel like it's important for me to, in a way, speak my truth. And while that may not be of benefit to the other people listening as much, I do feel like it's going to be of real lasting benefit to me. And I'm kind of okay with that. So in my own practice, it started, I'd say, in college. I was feeling a lot of pain, a lot of emotional pain, which sounds like something you know about. There was a lot of alienation, where I felt alienated from myself.
Like Illuminati type aliens, or
No, just sort of more like a Marxian kind of disconnect. Right? I felt disconnected, alienated from my family, from peers, from classmates. And I started doing yoga and meditation back, it was about the early 90s. Now, I started to feel really good internally from doing those practices. But I did notice, kind of paradoxically, that I became more alienated then. I became more socially alienated, almost ostracized for doing these practices, because I was the weirdo. But as I think you know, and maybe other people that do yoga know, when you spend that much time trying to purify your own body and mind, you also want to take care of the things you're ingesting, like in your diet, to make sure that you're not taking in toxins or re-toxifying, messing up that purity. And I got into dietary practices then with a spiritual intention. So veganism, raw foodism, macrobiotics, even the paleo food stuff. But ultimately, one of the big things that I was challenged by was trying to find what the Buddha referred to as wise livelihood. I need to earn a living and support myself. And I decided to become an acupuncturist for a couple of reasons. One, I thought there'd be no better use of my resources than to help reduce or eliminate the suffering in other sentient beings. And two, as you've noted in some of your work, there's just something inherently spiritual about energy systems. So I thought acupuncture had that going for it. And so I would say I had these things going on, the meditation, the yoga, the diet, the wise livelihood, but I feel like after a couple of years, things just plateaued out. And then recently, I encountered your work, I found your teachings, your charismatic personality, and immediately I had this feeling that I want to be that. I want what he has. I want that stuff. And so one of the things I noticed about your own teaching, your own practice, is that you often wear purple T-shirts, right? And just as a little demo here, I started wearing purple T-shirts too. I'm going to just cam down for a second. The listeners won't see this, but I think the people that do see the video will see it. And it almost looks like one of the purple T-shirts you might have. But even with the purple T-shirts and everything I'm doing, I feel like my results are pretty lackluster.
Yeah.
And you're probably not surprised.
And you're probably not surprised that I'm not surprised. The purple T-shirt's a nice start. Your shaved head is also a nice start. The wise people either have long hair or no hair at all. That's according to the teachings of the Buddha and Jesus. Let me ask you a question, Josh. How tight are the yoga pants that you wear?
It's a good question. So the yoga pants I wear, I'm a size 33, 32, and I generally go for a medium. So
is that a medium in men's or women's?
Men's right now.
Yeah, well, those are entirely too loose. You're never going to be able to fully stretch your body if you're not wearing incredibly restrictive clothing. So if I were you, I would go for a women's size small. And a big part of what that opens up in your yoga practice is when you're in class and you're hitting a downward dog, the person behind you is greeted with your lycra encased genital silhouette. Now that strengthens their kundalini, and that'll awaken your kundalini once you notice their kundalini strengthened by your lycra encased genital silhouette.
Okay. So is it just about did you give me a brand for those pants?
No, the sponsorships haven't come through, so I'm not authentically using any specific brand. In fact, I'm personally wearing no pants while I do yoga currently because the sponsorships haven't come through.
Okay. Well, I hope those clear soon. Any other? Because I have a couple of specific questions about that I didn't really get into in my broad sweep of my practice, but a couple of specific questions. You've hinted at one of them already.
Is that a question or is that a statement?
It's both.
And what's the answer?
It's going to depend on what you say when I actually give you the question. I was asking if I could ask a question.
Yes, you can ask a question.
Okay. So one of the things about spirituality that I have really felt like I have come up short on is the ability to manifest material abundance. And I don't know if my other practice of a kind of a spiritual commitment to minimalism is at odds with the spiritual manifesting abundance.
Yeah. Minimalism is it's a Tibetan word that translates into the English term poverty consciousness. Abundance is certainly where it's at. And if you're having trouble finding more abundance in your life, then obviously the first place we need to look is your vision board. What's your vision board look like?
It's actually right behind me, but as you can see, it's non-existent.
Yeah.
So that's a gaping hole, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's a big gaping hole. A vision board is so important. It's so powerful, where you manifest things by controlling the universe, the world, and people around you through the power of your childishly demanding thoughts. So because it's so important, it's essential that you have the correct, well-calibrated vision board. And you can't create a well-calibrated vision board through action. You have to use the law of attraction
to get the vision board
to get
start?
the vision board that then uses more law of attraction to get you the material possessions and experiences that you think will make you happy. So the moral of this story is you need a vision board, and what you put on that first vision board is the exact picture of the vision board you want. Or else how would you possibly get the vision board that you want?
I think what you're describing, this is like the hidden key, really. You've just given me the key, because people have probably read the book The Secret and realized The Secret wasn't...
Are there actually words in that book, or is it... I thought it was just like a children's coloring book.
Actually, I only saw the DVD that someone lent me. But I tried it for a long time, and nothing came of it.
Yeah.
But that's because I hadn't put the vision board on the vision board, I think.
Faulty vision boarding.
Wow.
I've got a PhD in vision boardology. In fact, I wrote thesis. My thesis paper for my PhD, my dissertation, if you will, was faulty vision board techniquing and the demise of ancient civilizations. So, and I write about this in my forthcoming book, shameless self-promotion right there, where it becomes very clear that the ancient Egyptians and all the other great civilizations, the reason why they went extinct is they didn't know how to make proper vision boards. So on the cave walls, caves as in pyramids, and the hieroglyphics, the Egyptians were making pictures of what they already had. You know, hats that look like giant cat faces, bird face heads, grains. So they had a lot of abundance on their vision board of what they already had. But
so it's redundant. They're just stuck in what they had.
Absolutely. So they died of great droughts because they didn't know how to put on their vision boards what they wanted. In this case, they needed and wanted water. So the hieroglyphics are essentially it's a ancient recording of faulty vision board techniquing that unfortunately has cost millions, if not trillions, of people their lives.
Wow. And this PhD will be published soon, or it's already been published?
Both.
Okay. I think the vision board may be the key that will just unlock everything for me, in which case everything else I might ask now is probably redundant. But you did mention about my head not having hair, because when I started wearing the purple t-shirts, I noticed that I really wasn't getting much spiritual effect from it. Mm-hmm. And in fact, my wife started to voice things around maybe getting separated or divorced when the purple t-shirt started. I wasn't sure. I didn't want to confuse causation and correlation, but I do think they're causally correlated. And so here is the question. Is a man bun required with the purple t-shirt to activate the purple t-shirt spiritual properties?
It's a great question, and I understand why you ask it, but the answer is no. But you're on the right track. In order to activate the spiritual properties of mala beads, you do need a man bun, or else it's like fire with no flame.
Right. Or
it's just cold and wet.
Yeah. Or without wood or fuel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's been helpful to me, and I think I can go forward now in confidence that things will improve or get much better than they are. So I was wondering if we could tack and maybe step backstage a little bit to looking at, in a more serious light, maybe the spirituality of your comedy.
We can, but by the way, I think you got great results from that session right there, Josh.
And how do you know that? How can you tell?
I tell without telling. I don't tell how I can tell is what I'm saying. All right, it's a secret.
Yeah, but I've seen you do this with other people, and you do seem to know. You connect with their higher self sometimes. So I'm just not sure if you're really speaking truth with me.
Looks like you are not sure.
In that ambiguity, I
I
say.
am. I am is
Full.
the moral of the story.
Okay, okay. Well, I appreciate you acknowledging my progress, my results. Um, Shakespeare's fools highlighted hypocrisy and contradiction in his characters. A traditional Indian guru is one who casts light on darkness. And in many ways, I see your comedy casting significant light on these annoying foibles that people get into when they get into spiritual work.
Mhm.
Um, so the first question I have would be then, do you see your satire serving any kind of function, whether it's subversive or otherwise?
Yeah, I love the question. And of course, I have a biased point of view. I've got personal attachment to it. But I do. I do see it that way. That's my intention, that my satire does serve a higher purpose, casting of light onto shadows, um, and helping people consider ideas and perspectives about their current ideas and perspectives that are otherwise hard to come to, hard to, start to become less attached to our beliefs when it's spoken through a language of seriousness. But I do think the satire, the humor, the fool archetype, if you will, it's a language of safety. It's a language of levity where it's not very threatening, so we can consider things that otherwise our minds would be defended enough about, out of just like a fear response. We fear change happening, that we wouldn't even consider a shift in perspective, or consider what do I keep in my shadow, in my spiritual practice or nutrition practice, whatever the practice is. So again, that's my point of view. I'm biased, but that is my intention.
Yeah, no, it certainly seems that. Are there, and it seems like you're teasing out certain particular things that reoccur again and again and again when people come into these practices. Seriousness is sort of a core one, where people take things too seriously. But connected to that, there are other behavioral traits or psychological, even pathologies maybe that kind of get activated. Are
Yeah.
there any ones that you seem particularly or particularly concerned about or interested in?
Well, there's a few that come to my mind. I think the biggest one is when people, and when I say people, I mean like me too, like certainly in my past and still some present, but tons in my past. Um, when people try to act spiritual, it means they're not being themselves. And I personally believe that the most authentic spiritual connection we can have is by truly being ourselves, our unique, authentic self, not acting the role of being spiritual as it's portrayed by the stories that we've adopted in our minds about how I'm supposed to act, talk, wear clothes, whatever. So I think, when we seek that spiritual act, we're disconnecting from our true source of spirituality, which is, I think, just being our freaking true self. So to me, that's huge. And I think it's also natural for us to lose ourselves to a degree on the path of trying to find ourselves. I think it's a little bit of a paradox, and it's necessary. But how long we lose ourselves, and do we find ourselves after we've lost ourselves, is the question. And I think a lot of us are in a place of being relatively lost while believing that we're finding ourselves. So I think there's a big difference between believing that we're connecting to ourselves while we're actually losing ourselves versus actually connecting more deeply with ourselves. And then, so along those lines, a second thought, very related, is, to me, there's a shadow side to everything. And that's not a bad thing. It's just like, I think it kind of makes life a little more spicy. So if we don't see the shadow side of our spiritual practices, then it might just mean we're very rooted in our shadow side. We can't see it because we're there pretty exclusively in the first person perspective. And generally speaking, from my perspective, one of the shadow sides of our spiritual practices is when our spiritual beliefs, spiritual practices get in the way of our spirituality. And then a third thought I have is we're all human beings. We all have judgments and intolerances. Welcome to humankind. We all have them. However, when we try to hide those intolerances and judgments in noble-looking hiding spots, we misdirect the energy, and we can have our spiritual practice or our nutrition practice be essentially the vocabulary and the actions that we express the energy of intolerance. It's kind of like, I only associate with like-minded people. It can sound like a very spiritual thing to do, and it might actually be coming from a place of complete intolerance for people who are different than us. Or it's like, oh, I'm a vegan, and all you sons of bitches who aren't are just discussing. That has nothing to do with veganism. That is a crap load of judgment and intolerance that's misdirected and misrepresented as veganism or self-righteous paleo, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So to me, transparency completely increases the quality of our life. When we don't have transparency, I think the person that gets fooled the most is ourself. If we can see, like, what are my judgments? What are my intolerances? Where's my self-righteousness? Just be more honest, vulnerable, and transparent with it. I think we do ourselves a great service. We get to connect with ourselves more rather than disconnecting with ourselves, trying to hide these intolerances that we ourselves are intolerant to. That's why we don't express them directly. We express them like in a misdirected way so that we can convince ourselves that they don't exist in us. So anyway, the ultra-spiritual satire, that's certainly one of the shadows that I intend to shine the light on.
Right, because, the ultra... And I'm just, one of the questions I wonder if you could answer is, do you see this getting worse with social media? Because it seems to be one of the things that ultra-spirituality promotes, sort of self-promotion, publicizing what you're doing, publicizing your poses, publicizing every act of spiritual ascension in a way. And what gets really celebrated, and I thought this a little while ago, that the kind of Facebook is the collective false self. That there's this false self of positivity and no negativity, no judgment, no criticism is really permitted, or you're just sort of a troll. And there is, just to echo back, there's a kind of avoidance in that, where people are using spirituality or the tropes of spirituality to avoid actually sitting with their own judgments, their own dislike or disdain for things, whether it's internal towards themselves or as you're talking interpersonally.
Yeah, I love that perspective. And a delusional thought that I would add on to it is, maybe social media makes it worse, but the way my mind looks at it is social media makes it more noticeable. Maybe for decades, if not hundreds, if not thousands of years, these sort of ultra spiritual practices were there, but it's just now social media is a magnifying glass that shows us much closer what's been there. And to me, that's not a bad thing. That's like an amazing thing, because it helps us do something about it. It's kind of like if our liver's full of toxins, we can't really do anything about that. We can't get healthier until we pull those toxins out, chelate them, bring them out of our bodies. So I think the awareness of, wow, through social media, this stuff is like pretty apparent. The completely fabricated Instagram post of me meditating is like, I was instructing someone on how to take that picture. That's not me meditating, but that's me wanting approval from other people, me wanting to control how other people see me as still or whatever. It's great that we can notice that, or else we can't do anything about that. Kind of like I'll call it the egotisticalness of it all. And I don't think egotistical is a bad thing. It's just, it's something to grow beyond.
As you're going through that, I'm reliving my experience on Facebook, where I see these kind of ultra spiritual posts of people and my own internal annoyance with that. I'm wondering, I mean, I can't really comment, like, could you stop the shameless self-aggrandizing there? But has anyone used your videos and just sort of plug them in the comment section of people's posts like that? Has that become a thing yet? As a way of responding?
I've seen some of that. I don't really know how much it happens. I by no means try to monitor all of Facebook. But yeah, I think it happens. And then also I will say that, the intention of my videos isn't to shame or belittle people who do that. I do that. I try to just be aware when I'm doing it so I can be honest. And even like, some of my posts, I'll say something about like, here's me doing a yoga pose, please notice me. It's a way of just like playing with what we all do, but it's just like, I'm being transparent with it. So yeah, nonetheless, I don't endorse people using my videos or my creative concepts as a way of shaming and belittling other people or making them wrong. No. In fact, that is the opposite of my intention. My intention is to have the videos be a source of compassion and embracing that which is there that we otherwise kind of disconnect from.
And that's really, if I may compliment you, that's you walk this fine line, where yes, there's satire, yes, you're making fun of things in a way, but there's definitely this energy, to use that word, there's this energy of kindness behind it, I think, and levity in it, which is really nice. But one of the things you also, it seems clear in your comedy, is that you're critiquing from within. And I could be wrong here, but it seems like you have probably done a lot of these kinds of practices or similar practices or been on certain paths. And I'd like to hear, or have the audience hear possibly, what has been your process in coming to where you are now?
Yeah, and I love your perceptibility. First off, I agree that there's the videos they come from a place of critiquing within, and hopefully acceptance is part of that critiquing process. But yeah, everything I do in videos is either directly or somehow related to me and my life, either in a literal way or pretty close to it nonetheless. Because I don't want videos to come from a place of condescending judgment. People talk about, here's an idea, JP. And some of them I'm like, wow, that would be a great video, but I'm not going to do it because I don't feel right with that subject matter. People have suggested, like, do a video on Scientology. I'm like, I think that would be a great video. I think it would be fun. I think it would be funny. And it would come from a place of condescending judgment. I feel like, my snap judgment of Scientology is like, oh, those weird, creepy sons of bitches over there. And I'm okay having like that delusional judgment. But if I was to make a video, it would come from an angle of condescension rather than acceptance. So yeah, with that said, my process, when I was 23, I moved from Ohio, where I was born and raised, to Southern California, North County, San Diego. That's, I think, one of the yoga capitals of the world, and spirituality is big out there, which also means the trendy shadow side of spirituality is also big out there. So I definitely immersed in it and lost myself in it, and didn't know that for years. I was, competitive spirituality. I need to be more spiritual than other people. I need to meditate more than other people, and somehow subtly drop in conversation how long I meditate. And I need to make sure that instead of just speaking my thoughts, I speak words that sound very sophisticatedly spiritual. So,
and delivered with this tone.
Absolutely.
Because you nail that tone.
For sure. That was 100% part of it, for sure. So, there's so much filtering that happens there. And unfortunately, I think for me, most of what was getting filtered out was me and my authenticity. So, I lived in that environment for a solid 10 years, and towards the end of my Southern California stay, I started to, maybe the last 3 years, like, some of what I was doing, it's like, it's not me anymore. And then I like keep observing the community around and see myself in the community and start to become amused with it, start to become less attached. And then, moved from Southern California to the East Coast. And shortly thereafter was, maybe it was like a year after, I don't even remember. But that's when I started to put into video form some of the concepts that I had lived through and that I had seen lots of people live through, and some of them that I'm still living through, and I'm okay with that.
Great. Can we ask what does your spiritual practice look like these days?
I'm going to give you like a super abstract answer first, and I'll give you a direct answer in a second. But in theory, from my point of view, the most spiritual thing we'll ever do is live our life. I think when we categorize and create senses of separation in our life and say, well, this compartment is my spiritual practice, I think what we really mean to say there is that's my intentional spiritual practice. But when I'm out mowing my lawn, when I'm fighting with my ex-girlfriend, when I'm paying a bill, when I'm getting frustrated at something, and when I'm walking my dog and picking up his poop in a bag, that's also my spiritual practice. So I think for me, living life in a way that I'm constantly challenging my comfort zone is the most important part of my spiritual practice, and doing my best to also connect somehow with a sense of purpose and even the mundane, kind of like Zen, like when I'm going out to get mail, or I have a flight that's postponed, delayed, and I'm in an overcrowded airport. Like, what's the serendipity, synchronicities, and purpose here? So to me, outside the realm of my intentional spiritual practice, I think is where the real benefit happens, just my delusional perspective. So now to a little bit less of an abstract answer. Currently, my spiritual practice, intentional spiritual practice, I think definitely a part of it is working with clients. While it appears as though I'm in the position of the coach, each client is teaching me something about me, and I'm very enthralled with what I have to learn about me that I don't already know. And I think exploring mystery is a very important part of my spiritual practice, and part of how I explore the mystery, the unknowns of my undiscovered self, is based on what I learned from clients. I may not have lived their literal life, but anything they've gone through, I've got my version of. So to me, that's very important. Another part of my intentional spiritual practice is I do dream work. I work with a dream therapist, usually about once every 2 weeks. Sometimes that varies if I'm doing a lot of traveling. So paying attention to my dreams is very important to me. And then my meditation practice is kind of fallen off. It's been probably about 2 months since I've been not dedicated to it. And I'm kind of like, wondering what the hell is that all about? But apparently I still needed to mention a meditation practice
to be legit.
Yeah. It's fallen off, but at least the meditation practice was there.
Pre-existed, yeah.
But yeah, that is the gist of it. And I really can't highlight enough, for me, one of, if not the most important parts of my spiritual practice is doing things and saying yes to opportunities that make me feel uncomfortable. So
are you admitting that you feel uncomfortable?
That's a great question. Absolutely. And actually, in this moment, I feel quite comfortable. Nor would I want to live my life 100% of the time uncomfortable. But I do think real life happens outside of our comfort zone. And I think we encounter we encounter ourselves to a deeper degree when we're not in our comfort zone. So, Yeah, with that said, in this moment, I'm in my comfort zone.
You're in your wheelhouse. You're in your wheelhouse. What I think inquiring minds want to know, what is outside your comfort zone? How does that show up for you?
Well, yeah, you know, earlier, for instance, earlier this year, for probably about 10 years or so, I've done a lot of speaking and teaching. But earlier this year, I started getting offers to speak and perform for crowds for a fee that, like, I was literally uncomfortable accepting that much money for an appearance and speaking it, and it really got me in touch. Wow, I feel this part of me that devalues himself and therefore has trouble accepting money that feels somehow more valuable than how I value myself. So, but saying yes to it anyway.
Going through it. Were those invitations on the vision board?
That's no, unfortunately they weren't.
That may have been
but
the
I
problem.
said yes to them anyway, so I don't know if I screwed up my whole life.
Yeah, so maybe the next PhD will get into that. What happens when peripheral things happen on outside the vision board?
Absolutely. And, another couple, big pushes outside of my comfort zone that I said yes to, because my heart said yes. Like, my body says, I'm afraid, but my heart says, oh, this is good.
Yeah.
If I was on the edge of a cliff about to jump off, my body would say, I'm afraid, and my heart would say, don't jump off. But here it's like, I'm afraid, and my heart says,
go for it.
Move towards it. So last year at some point I was approached by book publishers to do a book on how to be ultra spiritual, and my heart said yes, I love that idea. My body's like, write a book, what the hell, I've never done that. And I had flashbacks to being in high school, and the teacher would say, no, you have to write a 2-page paper. I was like, 2 pages, how am I going to write a 2-page paper? So, like, there was all of that, but I said yes, and it was wonderful cliff jump out of my comfort zone. Recently, I've signed on also to do we'll develop a TV show based on my ultra spiritual character, and it's like, I've never done that, and my mind creates all these delusional expectations, and they scare me. So my body goes under the fear response, but my heart says, yeah, that feels like a good thing for me to move towards, while other parts of me freak out.
Sure.
So yeah, those are a couple examples, and bigger examples in my life, honestly, of shattering my comfort zone.
Yeah, no, I would subscribe to that. I think it's good to step outside the comfort zone. It occurs to me that listening that it sounds like your sense of spirituality, your practice around spirituality, could also sound like a kind of self-help, self-therapy, where there's integration of the self, is you're connecting with aspects of yourself. A lot of spirituality, what gets lumped under spirituality, is also a lot of weird woo-woo stuff, like whether it's crystals or past life or astral projection and things like. And you sort of mocked that a little bit or poked at that in your comedy. But do you see spirituality as just being a kind of comprehensive self-integration, or is it something else too?
It's probably both. I think practical spirituality, from my point of view, is a self-integration, self-help, self-growth, and in the genuine terms of it, I think sometimes people call self-growth, they call the desire to get rich self-growth. And while that might be a part of it, that's definitely not all of it. So genuine self-growth, to me, that's practical spirituality, healing our emotional wounds that we all carry, coming to terms with what feels purposeful for me now, and working on removing the rationalizations, justifications, and blockages that we create to get in the way of living a sense of purpose. And then also, if that's the practical side, maybe the abstract side, and I don't mean abstract in a bad way, just meaning it's much less tangible to the 5 senses, the past lives, the astrology, things like that, I have a lot of respect for. And I think it's absolutely part of the spiritual realm. And because, it's kind of like spiritual realm everywhere we look, and there's so many avenues, astrology, dream work, emotional healing, past life regressions. So with all of that, I think it's great for us to sample, try the variety, trying all these different spiritual clothes, if you will, and then find the ones that fit right for us now. To me, that's important. Otherwise, I think if all we're doing is puddle hopping, we're not going to gain much traction. But I think we got to puddle hop to sample, see what feels right to us, and then be devoted to those practices until we have evidence that we've run that well dry for us.
Right. The box becomes claustrophobic in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Well, listen, I think I want to be mindful of your time, which you've been very generous with. And I think we're coming towards the end, but I really just want to thank you for your transparency, your candidness, and I feel kind of blessed and have kind of a feeling of infinite gratitude for.
Oh, thank you, brother.
I even feel a little transformed. I think this conversation's been transformational, at least for me. Actually, I hate to interrupt. There's someone knocking at my door. For 1 second. Just 1 second, JP. 1 second. You're not going to believe this, JP, but it came. Hang on 1 second there. JP, look at this. This Amazon man just delivered. What do you think?
Well, there's something about you, Josh. I can't put my finger on what it is, but you look so much more enlightened than you did even 30 seconds ago.
Yeah.
Did something change about you?
I think that's the transformation.
Wow.
And just because you have been, I wasn't sure whether I would share this with you or not. Is it okay if I share with you first?
I'll allow it, brother.
Okay. Well, just after this conversation airs, I'm going to be opening or uploading my own YouTube channel called Awakening with JG. Now, G is my initial, my middle initial. It also stands for guru, as you know. And I think I want to take the show into ultra post-spirituality, which is something I don't even want to get into the details around right now, but I think it's important. Because one of the differences in, I think, our basic approach is when you say awaken with JP, that word awaken kind of implies that there's an end point. Like it happens in time and it's over. You're one and done. But awakening, the way I envision it, is more of a ongoing commitment to a process. And, based on that difference, I don't have any kind of conflict in my mind around stealing your brand and taking it to the bank. So I was hoping maybe I could get your blessing and maybe even an endorsement for the new show.
Yeah, and I love how you phrase that. I would be, I too don't see conflict with you stealing my brand and capitalizing monetarily off of my creations. So yeah, I mean,
because you have enough.
I can't possibly think of anything wrong with that.
You have enough attainment, right, to handle that.
Yeah, hold on. Let me just get my lawyer on speed dial here. Call Josh Summers.
I mean, this is
that's different. That's something else.
But this is really a mashup between you, Steven Tyler, and Trump. The comb over. It's unique. Listen, JP.
Yeah, the red hair definitely suits you, brother.
Imitation is the highest form of whatever it is. Love your work. Keep us all sane, and namaste.
Awesome, Josh. Thank you, brother, for having me on.
Yeah, love your stuff. All right.